Imagine the hush of a Roman morning, September 11, 1599. A young woman, just 22, climbed the steps slowly. She wore a simple white dress, her hair neatly pulled back from her face. Around her, a silent crowd watched, their faces a mixture of sorrow and morbid curiosity. At the top, the glint of a blade awaited her. This was Beatrice Cenci, young, noble and beautiful, on the verge of losing her head. But why? Was it for her captivating beauty, for the mere fact of being a woman, or for her courageous defiance of a monstrous father? This isn't a tale of grand wars or intricate political schemes. This is a story woven with threads of raw power, oppressive silence, and the tragic fate of a woman who paid the ultimate price for the misfortune of her birth. Beatrice wasn't just a victim of a sentence, she became the enduring symbol of injustice in her era. What you're about to uncover is as true as it is heartbreaking. To grasp the full weight of her execution, we must journey back to the beginning, to the opulent Cenci mansion. This was one of Rome's wealthiest and most influential households, yet behind its grand marble facade, a dark secret festered. The patriarch, Francesco Cenci, was a man so feared that even his own servants trembled in his presence. His wealth and power were immense, controlling vast fortunes, lands and prestigious titles. But within the family something was deeply rotten. Neighbours whispered, servants knew, but no one dared to voice the unspeakable truth. Francesco harboured a dark obsession, and its name was Beatrice, his own daughter. Born in 1577, in a Rome where simply being a woman was already a challenge, being beautiful intensified that burden. But being beautiful, a woman, and the daughter of Francesco Cenci, that was a curse. Francesco didn't see Beatrice as his child. He viewed her as a possession, a piece of property to be controlled and exploited. Beatrice's early life was a gilded cage. She lived amidst silks and jewels, yet utterly devoid of freedom. Francesco kept her isolated within the palace, hidden from the outside world. His reason? He feared her beauty would attract suitors, and he had no intention of sharing Beatrice with anyone. By the time she turned 15, the situation became unbearable. Francesco's interest in her twisted beyond that of a father. He would enter her chambers without warning, watch her as she dressed, and make comments about her body that filled Beatrice with terror. When she attempted to resist or complain, Francesco wielded his absolute authority to silence her. So, what exactly was happening behind those locked doors? Servants spoke of screams echoing from Beatrice's rooms late at night, of locked doors, constant tears, and a young woman slowly losing her grip on sanity. Francesco had transformed his own daughter into a prisoner within her own home. Beatrice desperately sought help. She secretly wrote letters to relatives, pleading with servants to smuggle messages beyond the palace walls. But who would believe a young woman's word against one of Rome's most powerful men? Francesco's influence reached into the Vatican itself. He had enough money to buy silence, and the law, in his eyes, was on his side. After all, he was the patriarch. Beatrice was merely his daughter. The situation escalated when Francesco decided it was time for Beatrice to marry. Not just anyone, but someone he could completely control, a man who wouldn't question the bizarre conditions of such a union. Francesco intended to keep Beatrice close, even after her marriage. He wanted to maintain his perverse access to her. It was then that Beatrice encountered Olimpio Calvetti, a young soldier working at the family's rural castle. Olimpio was different from the other men Francesco brought around. He was gentle, respectful, and genuinely cared for Beatrice. For the first time in years, she felt truly seen, recognized as a person, not an object. Their romance blossomed in secret, intense and fervent. They met in hushed corridors, exchanged hidden letters, and dreamed of a future far from that suffocating prison. Olimpio promised Beatrice he would whisk her away from that house, that he would protect her from Francesco. But Francesco discovered their clandestine relationship. His reaction was explosive. He immediately dismissed Olimpio, forbade Beatrice from leaving her chambers, and tightened his surveillance over her. Worse still, he began inflicting punishments that drove Beatrice to utter despair. She realized that she would never truly be free as long as Francesco drew breath. It was in that moment of desperation that the audacious plan was conceived. Beatrice, along with her stepmother Lucrezia and her brother Giacomo, began to conspire against Francesco. This wasn't merely about achieving freedom, it was about survival. Francesco was systematically destroying every life in the family, and they knew the situation would only worsen. Their plan was simple: yet fraught with peril. During a trip to the family's rural castle, they would hire assassins to eliminate Francesco. They would stage it to look like an accident, perhaps a fall from a balcony during the night. They reasoned that no one would scrutinize the death of such a universally reviled man too closely. September 1598 arrived. The Cenci family was at Petrella Castle, far from the watchful eyes of Rome. It was the perfect opportunity. In the dead of night, two men slipped into Francesco's room. He attempted to scream but was quickly silenced. Within minutes, Francesco Cenci, the tyrant who had terrorized his family for decades, had finally met his end. But here lay the devastating flaw in their plan. Francesco Cenci had enemies across Rome. He had outstanding debts, ongoing disputes, and countless political conflicts. Anyone could have had a motive to kill him. So why did suspicion immediately fall upon the family? Why did Beatrice become the primary suspect? The answer is both simple and cruel. Because she was a woman, because she was beautiful, and because Pope Clement VIII needed to make an example. Rome was teeming with powerful families who believed themselves to be above the law. The Pope intended to demonstrate that no one, not even a beautiful young woman from a noble lineage, could commit crimes and escape punishment. The subsequent investigation was a sham. Interrogators employed brutal methods to extract confessions. Servants were tortured until they corroborated whatever version the investigators desired. By the time they reached Beatrice, her guilt had already been predetermined. Beatrice was imprisoned alongside her entire family. For months, they languished in damp, dark cells, awaiting a trial whose outcome was already fixed. The Pope had decreed that the Cenci family would serve as a warning to all of Rome. They would all be executed. But why did Beatrice specifically become the focal point of all attention? Why did the posters of the time invariably feature her face? Why did all of Rome speak of her beauty, even before mentioning her alleged crimes? The answer is unsettling. Beatrice's beauty was seen as a threat. In a society dominated by powerful elderly men, a beautiful young woman who dared to defy paternal authority was perceived as dangerous. The trial was nothing more than a carefully orchestrated performance. Beatrice attempted to defend herself, detailing years of suffering, describing the abuse she endured at Francesco's hands. But none of it mattered. The judges had no interest in Francesco's atrocities. Their sole objective was to confirm Beatrice's guilt. When the sentence was read, all of Rome was aghast, not by Beatrice's presumed guilt, but by the sheer cruelty of the punishment. A 22-year-old woman was to be publicly beheaded. Her brother Giacomo would be tortured before his own execution. Only the youngest son was spared due to his tender age. In the days leading up to the execution, a remarkable wave of sympathy swept through Rome. Nobles, merchants, and even clergy began to plead for mercy on Beatrice's behalf. They argued she was too young, that she had suffered immensely, and that the punishment was disproportionate to the alleged crime. But Pope Clement VIII remained unyielding. He was resolute that Beatrice Cenci would be an example, and nothing would sway his decision. In fact, Beatrice's growing popularity only solidified his resolve. He could not allow a condemned criminal to transform into a popular heroine. The fateful day arrived, September 11, 1599. The Sant'Angelo Bridge was jammed with people. Thousands had come to witness Beatrice Cenci's execution. Some were driven by morbid curiosity, others by profound compassion. Many clung to the hope that, at the very last moment, a papal pardon would arrive. Beatrice appeared dressed in white, like a bride. Her hair was pulled back, her face serene. She neither wept nor begged. She walked with a dignity that even impressed her executioners. Reaching the scaffold, she offered a silent prayer and knelt. The executioner hesitated. It said his hands trembled, carrying out the execution of such a beautiful young woman who had endured so much, seemed wrong, even to a man accustomed to death. But the orders were unequivocal. With a swift, decisive motion, the blade descended. Beatrice Cenci was dead. A profound silence fell over the crowd. There were no shouts of approval, as was common at executions, only a heavy quiet, as if all of Rome instinctively knew it had witnessed a profound injustice. In the days that followed, flowers mysteriously appeared at the execution site. The people had transformed Beatrice into a martyr. Yet the central question lingers: was Beatrice truly guilty? Did she actively participate in the plan to eliminate Francesco? Or was she merely a convenient victim of a system desperate for a scapegoat? The evidence is contradictory. Testimonies were extracted under torture, and the political pressure was immense. What we know for certain is that Francesco Cenci was a monster. Historical records confirm his abuse, his relentless cruelty, and his sick obsession with his own daughter. If Beatrice played a part in his death, it was an act of desperate self-preservation. If she did not, she died unjustly accused. The story of Beatrice Cenci resonated throughout Europe. Poets immortalized her, painters captured her tragic beauty, writers transformed her life into a compelling legend. She became a powerful symbol of the struggle against oppression, of feminine resilience against patriarchy, and of the inherent injustice of absolute power. But perhaps the true tragedy isn't even her death. It's the sobering realization that more than 400 years later, stories like Beatrice's continue to unfold. Women are still punished for their beauty, still silenced by misogynistic systems, and still pay with their lives for daring to defy powerful men. Beatrice Cenci died at just 22 years old. Her beauty was her curse, her courage her perceived crime, and her youth was cruelly squandered by men who viewed women as mere property. She was beheaded not for being guilty but for being inconvenient, not for being a criminal but for being too free for the rigid standards of her era. The blade that severed her head on that sombre September day also severed the innocence of an age. Rome learned that even the purest beauty, the most radiant youth, could be utterly destroyed by the cold cruelty of power. And we, more than 4 centuries later, still remember Beatrice, not as the criminal they desperately tried to portray her as, but as the victim she always truly was. Her death wasn't justice. It was merely another stark demonstration that when it comes to women, society often finds a way to transform victims into villains. Beatrice Cenci paid with her life for the unforgivable sin of being born beautiful in a time when that alone was considered crime enough.